Good afternoon, and welcome to the webinar today. So before we get started, just want to do a couple of quick housekeeping items. First off, of course, we want to thank all of you for attending. Always exciting to have a moment to connect with our clients, talk about important issues. Speaking of important issues, this month is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So kind of bringing some special content to you today based off the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We're always happy to talk about this topic. It is extremely important. So, it's a couple of people you're going to see here on the screen. So, I want to do some quick introductions. So, we have Chuck Cooper III. He is our Strategic Alliance Specialist. My name is Dave Deckard. I'm an account manager here for PGH. We are also joined by an exciting guest, Jamie Moore. She's Manager of Partner Success for Blackpoint. And then also we have Derek Geisler, who's going to be bringing it in with the wheel of names at the end of it. So those of you that attended, we'll go ahead and we'll do the wheel of names. You'll get a pack of these sweet PGH Networks t-shirts. This is our MTV edition. There you go. We got the, again, just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. So give you a sense of the agenda today. Now we've done some introductions. We're going to be bringing in Jamie, who's going to be doing her presentation. We'll have some commentary and conversation built around that. At the end of it, we're going to have an opportunity for questions. So if you have a question, you're going to see a chat bubble up above. Please make sure that you go ahead and type that question in there, and we'll field some questions. And then, of course, we're going to have none other than the wheel of names with Derek. So I think that's all of our housekeeping items. Let's bring in Jamie Moore, and I want to thank everyone for attending. Jamie?
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I am so excited to be here today to talk about my very favorite subject, which is cybersecurity. Maybe rock climbing's my second favorite. Who knows? They're close. I was talking with the group before we joined today about how excited I am to be entering into October. You get to have all of the fun Halloween stuff. You get to do Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And then we've got lots of travel for events and shows coming up. So it's a really great time to be in security. What I hope each of you get out of this presentation today is a sense of what you can do to take better control of your cyber risk and how you can position your business to be more defended against cyber criminals. So my name's Jamie. I have been working in cybersecurity for about 8 years now, moving into 9 years, and I'm going to go ahead and get this presentation up on the screen. So the goal again is cybersecurity awareness training. I want each of you to walk away with something useful. Please pop your questions into that chat. That would be amazing if you ask those as they come up, okay? All right, anything else before we get started? Okay, let's go.
Good.
Wonderful, that's perfect. So we've already done introductions. So we have an excellent group today gathered to talk to you guys about cybersecurity. And what we're going to do is focus on how we can prepare you to win the unfair fight against cybercrime. So Blackpoint Cyber is a cybersecurity company that was developed from folks on the offensive side. Now, when I say offensive, well, that's kind of gentle talk or a euphemism for hacking, right? My founder, CEO, John Murchison, likes to joke. He's like, yeah, we're the professional bad guys, but we're playing for the right team. I always remind him, I'm like, we have clients all over the globe, like, it's all subjective, right? But he was with the NSA for 12 and a half years, serving our country, completing some of our top cyber operations. What he learned from that background is how bad actors move in an environment and how they beat your cybersecurity tools. We live in a day right now where it's very clear that cybersecurity is top of mind. Cybercrime is at an all-time high. We say that each and every year, and it's true. It's growing exponentially. Why is that happening? Well, we have a couple of things kind of all merging together to make this perfect storm. We have technology itself advancing. Businesses more and more are reliant on the internet, reliant on technology in order to do their jobs. You have not secret, but really well hidden ways with cryptocurrency to get paid and to move money around. And then you've got countries, since everything's connected now, you've got very low risk for those cyber criminals. So basically, hackers are initiating more than 2,000 attacks a day. And this is happening because, again, high reward situation. There's lots of money to be made, and there's very low risk. So, what business entrepreneur wouldn't like to get a piece of that, right? High reward, low risk kind of situation. Well, this results in a lot of damage for our businesses. Damage related to cybercrime is projected to hit $6 trillion this year. That's an insane amount of money. I can't even wrap my mind around that money, which is why I really like this number over here. This $42,000 is the average ransomware payment that a small to mid-sized business has to give in order to get their data back. So I want each of you who are here today to think about that. $42,000 is a really real number, right? That is maybe someone's salary, maybe a couple of months worth of payroll for your entire team. You do not want to put yourself in a position where you are having to decide between making your payroll or paying a criminal. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then finally, the last one I really want to talk about is this 90% of breaches occur outside of working hours. So this is, again, very important to keep in mind when you're building out your cybersecurity strategy, is to be aware of this. So guys, what are your thoughts on this? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in and ask a quick question, Jamie. When we think about the cyber attacks, often we think about the national, international companies, but why are small businesses the target?
It's a really, really good question. I hear a lot, oh, no one cares about my business. I just make this like little part for the sprocket, and the only data I have are my clients' names, and they're all it's public information anyways. Like, why would a hacker want my data? And the answer to that, unfortunately, goes back to that story I was telling about how there's so many criminals, so many attacks, and the fact that that data might not be interesting to a hacker, but it's vital for that small business. So you need to know who your customers are. You need to know what their orders are, what their due dates are, who's been invoiced, who's paid, who hasn't paid, right? That is all basic information that you need to run your business. What these bad actors are doing is they're encrypting all of that data and locking you out of your own network. So sure, your data might not be of interest to someone else, but is definitely interesting to you. The next layer to that is it's actually a sports analogy, which I joke because I'm not super sportsy myself. But sometimes like the best ability is availability, right? These big international enterprise companies have just almost unlimited cybersecurity budgets at this point to try to fend off cybercrime. Makes it very difficult to hack into those networks. So if I'm a bad actor and I have to work really, really, really hard for maybe a single payoff, or I can just scan and see who might have this vulnerability. I might only get a couple $1,000s each pop, but I can cast a wide net and rope all that money in all at once. I mean, I'm going to go after the little guys. That's why 43% of breach victims are actually small business.
One follow-up, what is that experience like for the small and mid-sized businesses?
So this is another layer, is that a lot of small businesses aren't necessarily prepared to know how to identify, how to act, how to respond to a cybercrime. I was talking the other day to a CPA firm that had recently had a cyber attack. Now they knew their data was important to them and to their customers, but they weren't really prepared for the impact of their business when their computers became ransomware encrypted and they were locked out of their system in the week before they were supposed to have their deadlines for submitting their clients' taxes. It was devastating. Again, think about the fact that all of our lives are on these computers. We sit down in the morning, we pop open our laptop or log into our calendar, and we're like, okay, what am I doing today?
Right.
Imagine your business loses that ability. Even for a few minutes, it's disruptive, let alone days or weeks that it takes to recover from these types of attacks. Any other questions before we move into this?
I don't have a question, but just like I think the thing that astounds me as a comment is that how much of a business cybercrime has become. I mean, when you talk about the trajectory that you just described, at one point in time, we just thought about like, these clandestine operations where they're, targeting this large corporation. And what they realize from a business perspective is something that any business realizes, right? You need volume and you sort of need a pipeline. And what these cyber criminals have effectively done is they've created a pipeline by casting a wide net of leads and then targeting in on the leads that raise their hand and seem interested, or in this case, not interested, but bite.
Absolutely. So I think one thing that I know my company falls victim to, a lot of technology companies fall victim to, is we get really wrapped up in the bits and bytes, nuts and bolts of the cyber problem. We get really wrapped up in the tools. We get really wrapped up in the technology and how the breach happened and all of this stuff, how we can protect against it. But for our guests here today, the people attending this show, it's really important to think about the business impact. And it goes beyond just, oh, I can't get my data, or paying a ransom. There's additional financial loss. There's the overall disruption to both your people and your customers, insurance exposure. We also have reputational damage. It's like a really intangible type of harm. If your company is known to be the company that got breached, that is definitely not a story you want told about your business. And then if you are in a environment that is under any kind of compliance, HIPAA, PCI, CMMC, one of those organizations that are kind of giving you guidelines and rules, the fines and damages that you get layered on top of your already way too expensive cost of a breach is just too much. You definitely do not want to expose your business to that kind of risk. So at this point, I'd like to spend a minute and kind of shift gears, because I'm not all about doom and gloom. It is important to realize that cybercrime is a really tangible, real threat to your business. It's not like flood or fire that might happen, probably won't, but if it does, it's damaging. But it's almost a matter of if when, right? If you have any kind of vulnerability and you're doing business online, it is a very, very high likelihood that at some point one of those cybercrime criminals will get you. So how do we stop talking doom and gloom? How do we shift into hope? That's really what I want to focus on, is how we take our business back from cyber criminals. The first thing and the first way that you begin to fight back against cybercrime is doing just what you're doing today. And that is learning about how cyber criminals operate and making sure that you've got a really good view on what kind of actions will help you actively stop the way bad guys get around your security protections. You might think, oh, I've got antivirus, I've got a firewall, so I'm safe. Well, everyone everyone today has a firewall in their network closet. Everyone has antivirus on their computers, and as we just saw, 2,000 plus cyber attacks a day are occurring. So the reason that happens is bad actors are working around your cyber protections. If I'm a hacker, my first step is planning. I got to figure out who I'm going to target. Am I going to cast a big wide net and try to get lots of fish? Am I going to go right after one business and just pull that one in? How am I going to pick my target? I'm going to do a little bit of research to make myself as attractive as possible, put the right bait out for that target. And then I'm going to actually go ahead and pick my attack vector. There's not much you can do to ward off a bad actor from planning to target your business. You can maybe limit the amount of private information you put out onto your website and onto your social media, maybe not use people's exact email addresses. But at the end of the day, bad actors are going to be able to do some planning. You can't stop it from happening. The next
Jamie,
step, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to jump in there. I keep hearing more and more about these hackers living off the land. What does that mean?
Yeah, so living off the land is a really interesting term. Thank you for bringing that up. what it means is kind of like, I don't know if any of you either go hiking or homesteading, right? Where you are trying to just use the tools around you in order to survive or sustain yourself. Living off the land for a hacker is the same way. If I can use my own tools against me to achieve some of these steps in the hacker timeline, instead of breaking in and using someone else's tool to try to break into a network, maybe I'm just going to exploit something they already have in their environment. So I'm going to break in maybe through their firewall. Maybe it's missing a patch and I know how to exploit that. So I'm going to sneak on in. And then instead of running a virus right away that's going to get blocked by their antivirus product, maybe during this enumeration or this discovery phase, maybe I just use command line and I use PowerShell and PS exec. These are just basic programs built into our computers every day. And if I can run simple questions and queries in those programs that are already installed on the network, again, I can avoid detection. Your antivirus can't ban Windows as malicious. So when we say we're living off the land in cybersecurity, we mean we're using what's there in order to explore. Then you got to move from device to device. And again, if you can do this using those basic functions to move from computer to computer, there's no security tool that's going to be able to just block that automatically. Because they're using functions that all of your programs use every day to allow you to connect and communicate between these computers. And then finally, the bad actors, after they've spread laterally, after they've learned what safety tools you have in place, then they can research, okay, oh, this company is using this kind of antivirus. Well, if I know if I run this exploit, or this exploit, and download this virus, I can beat that particular antivirus because I've done my research. And then that allows me to complete my objective. So you have so many tools that you put in place to try to keep yourself safe. But if you've got a bad actor living off the land, they're just going to go right around them. Which is why at Blackpoint, what we do is we build in tools. Our product, our technology is called Snap Defense, and we use it to detect those live off the land technologies. Any other questions about that?
Is there a way to stop it? Why does it keep happening?
So it keeps happening to businesses really because, again, if you're just using your Windows tools and you're relying on your automated tools to stop them, you can't tell your antivirus product to block Windows. Like, I know that's such a ridiculous sounding statement, but if I'm a hacker and I want to get around the tools that you have in place to protect yourself, I know you're using them. I'm just going to research. I'm just going to figure out what you've got in place, and then I'm going to pick the attack I know I can use to get by. And this is why no matter how many antiviruses and firewalls and like this race to arms that we're in against these hackers, doesn't matter what you put in place, if you don't have something that is detecting that internal behavior and looking for anything that steps out of line, you're going to be in trouble. So let's go ahead and move into how you can use that knowledge of what it could go wrong, right? How the bad actors move to build a complete security stack that's going to protect you. So what we have here really is this idea of this fact that we've got the ability to identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. It's this really basic idea of the NIST cybersecurity framework. I don't really care what cybersecurity framework you like resonate with, but you got to pick one. You don't want to just start throwing darts on a board, picking, technologies out of the toolkit and saying, oh, I'm going to be secure because I've got this piece and this piece. You've got to strategically put these pieces together. See, I love this imagery because they stack one on the other, and they make it really resounding. But basically, you need elements in your security stack to identify all of your assets and all of the threats to those assets, protect those threats or assets against those imagined threats, detect when something has gone wrong, respond when something has gone wrong, and then recover, which is your backup and disaster recovery. David, I know when we were talking, you had some thoughts about building the security stack.
Yeah, I really appreciate this image and this slide because there's a really couple different reasons. For one thing, I think sometimes for businesses, the concept of where do I start can get so overwhelming. So it really speaks to the importance of utilizing your resources through, your managed services firm, through the relationships with that, like for instance, PGH has with organizations like Blackpoint, because when you look at what you have in front of you, this is a really, really great sort of trimmed down, digestible version of NIST, because when NIST is like 120 some 120 plus different controls, right? So even for somebody that's into security, you look at that and you're like, oh my God, where do I start?
Can
And I
you,
think the thing, yes,
I'm sorry, David, I just for our guests, can you break down what a control is? Like that concept of controls, I think is really important for them to understand. 120 controls, what does that mean?
yeah. So for a control is basically like different recommendations and stipulations that need to be within your network. So controls can
Mhm.
range. They can range from different planning to how you have your network set up to different tools that are in use. So it just the list kind of goes on and on and on. So this is why having individuals like yourself and organizations like Blackpoint and PGH networks, you can really kind of leverage that relationship to take that wide swath of information, trim it down to what's useful and impactful to your business, and then develop a plan around it.
Mhm.
And so I think that it's a super important notion because any way that you can break down that barrier to help a business actually prepare and not say, look, I can't deal with all this. I'm just going to worry about it later. That's a win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jim, go ahead, Jamie.
Oh no, I was just going to say I couldn't agree with that statement more. Go ahead, Chuck.
I was just going before you move on, ask,
Mhm.
what kind of jumped out at me on the slide is the identify. Why is identifying your assets part of cybersecurity?
I think that that's a really good thing to dive into in a little bit more detail because identify sounds so boring, right? Like this asset control, asset inventory management. What even is an asset in technology? Uh, you're very first, and this is I want our attendees to kind of have their ears perked up here because this is your first takeaway. Knowing exactly what devices that you have in the environment, who has access to those devices, where does the data live, and who has access to that data. Understanding that map of your network is the first step in taking control of protecting it. Once you know what you have in place, then you can begin to realize, okay, I need to make sure that these operating systems are patched and up to date. I need to scan for vulnerabilities. I need to plan for proactive replacements of these pieces of equipment that could fail or go out of date. And the only way to do that is to track and audit your technology assets. So again, make start by making a list or working with a company like PGH to evaluate each and every element of your technology and identify where it can get stronger, where it can get better. And that
And
also lead oh go ahead. Yeah.
no, I was going to say, and that's something easily that we can do. So with the tools that we use with our clients, we're able to gather all that information for asset management, and even if it's something as where the tools are not recognizing something, what we've done in the past is even gone on site and said, let's just do a walkthrough. Like maybe there's that errant laptop that's been sitting underneath the desk that kind of forgot that was there. Let's do a walkthrough and make sure that we have a good accounting of all your devices.
Yeah, what happens when someone says, "Oh, I need a laptop," and plugs that thing in, and maybe it's several versions out of date, and it's vulnerable, and now you've got this unknown vulnerability on your network that a hacker could come in. Asset management is like the least exciting, in my opinion, part of cybersecurity. Is also the very base that we build everything else upon. The next step, once you understand your assets and you understand the risks, the bad things that could happen to those assets, next thing is to protect them. One of the most common, so Blackpoint sees all kinds of threats, right? We see people breaking into networks all the time. It's our job to detect that and stop it. So that's exactly what we're looking at. The two most common things we see are threats coming in via email and threats coming in through your firewall or your remote access. So someone is connecting into your network from an outside source. So what can you do to protect yourself? Minimize your entry points. Hackers can exploit the same tools that you use to come into your network and to work remotely, in order to, you know, prevent that from happening. Reduce their access, only use business quality network equipment, deploy next gen firewalls, use secure remote access, multi-factor authentication, which we'll actually talk in more, and then block access to known bad sites. You take those few steps of taking control and blocking access to your network. Remember that statement I made earlier that sometimes the best ability is availability? Don't be available. Like, just don't be available to a hacker. You do not want to receive that pass. So go ahead and lock that down. So I do see we've got a question here. Timothy Stewart asks, how do you control hardware connecting to your network that you don't have control of? Vendors, contractors doing work for you. David, would you like to take a swing at that? How do you guys like to handle that?
Yeah, so I think, for first off, I think, having a filter that's not only applied to um, the endpoints that are on, within your building, but have these controls applied to the network. This way, if you have guests coming on and they connect to your network, you have a little bit of a barrier there, to be able to help with, outside traffic. Um, that would be my first instinct. I'm actually going to bring in Derek, if you don't mind. I'd love to bring you in on this as well and get your opinion as well.
So some of the new conversations around the industry have been really driven around a phrase called zero trust. And essentially that's turn everything off. Do not allow access for anything unless it is already approved. So when somebody like a vendor or a contractor wants access, they have to specifically request it before the IT group will allow them to join the network. Perhaps they plug into a printer port or they plug into a conference room port, and maybe we'll give them internet only access, but that's all they're going to get. They're only going to be able to get out to the internet. They're never going to be able to hit the local network. So that's super important right now. I also wanted to point out, from a reduced access standpoint, one of the real big ones, just with the way things have been with, how COVID is and how the cloud is, a lot of people are starting to move to the cloud. Two-factor or multi-factor authentication is uberly important in this whole fight against bad actors, right? It is another way that you're going to reduce access where you can. So if you perhaps aren't working in a traditional office type environment and you can't put a firewall in, MFA, turn it on for every application that you absolutely can. Most modern websites support it. If you're not doing it, do it immediately.
And just to break that down a little bit, multi-factor authentication, it's a fancy word for having a password and something else, right? So something you have with you and something So if you want to log into your bank, your password, but then you also have your cell phone, which is where they will text a 6-digit code to that you then have to add in. That using two different ways to authenticate into a website is the leading way to stop a bad actor from getting access to something they shouldn't. It is not perfect. It's not a magic bullet. You can't just set that up and think, oh, I'm done. That's the one thing we're trying to explain here with all of these different elements. As you're weaving a basket around your network, and you want to get those layers as close together and as tight as possible to make it strong. But at the end of the day, there's no one piece that's going to fix all problems. But multi-factor authentication makes a huge, huge impact. So the next area that we wanted to cover for you guys today is passwords in general. Passwords, including multi-factor authentication, passwords need to be long, strong, complex, They need to be rotated in a reasonable way. And then you also need to encourage the use of your employees need to be using probably password management software to enable them to follow those rules and requirements for your passwords. I think we're at a place where if you use a password, you use the same password everywhere. So the last time I counted, I had 86 unique online sites that I had logins to. My kids, school, it had like 3 alone. My bank, my all my loan, car, mortgage, right? Everything is different. Everything has a different password. If I use the same password in all of those sites, it's just a matter of time until one of them gets breached. And now my email address and my password together are just hanging out there for bad actors to buy and to use to try to break into other accounts. And they will do this. They get your Hulu password. They're going to assume you're using the same setup on your Netflix. They get your bank password, and maybe even on your bank too, right? They get their Target password, and now they think, oh, I can log into your bank. If you don't have multi-factor authentication turned on, you are at risk of this happening to you. So set your employees up for success. I can't remember 86 unique complex passwords that are 12 characters or more. Dave, can you?
I definitely can. And there's Derek will tell you there's no possible way I'm going to remember that. Derek and I have been working together for a little while. He knows me. So I mean, like, the thing of it is that the importance of this slide is, and all the things that you're mentioning is just paramount, because you hear every day there are simple applications that are hacked, and what happens to those applications is that they then go for sale on the dark web, and they're cheap. And then people will think like, well, if I change a digit, or if I change like 1 or 2 items, they want that's enough to take them off the scent. Not correct. They know they spend a lot of time studying the patterns. They have software that works with those patterns to try to crack those. Another thing, just to kind of, and this just occurred to me, I know, like, just from a personal user standpoint, a lot of people will see these things on Facebook where it asks these random questions. What was the first car that you had, right? What is your favorite dog? All those
What's
things.
your favorite color?
Right. People are just like, and they're typing away, and they're just, all these are, guys, if you see these, if you have friends, anyone that's actually responding, please stop. Because all you're doing, these are opportunities for people to fish around and use the crowd to gather data for free. As far as MFA, yes, sir.
Bringing it down to real world scenario. So, I mean, she had mentioned she has 86 separate, passwords, if you will, or separate entries to basically create passwords. Let's say you duplicate all 86 and it's the same password everywhere. You get hacked at one place, right?
Now you have to change them
86
different places.
So, I mean, just from a time standpoint alone, right? It's just like, look, I understand. I get it. I don't want to remember passwords either. Thank God for password managers that I have one, because I couldn't tell you what half of mine are, right? The majority of them, right? But I mean, I guess the point of this is like, look, it's a pain in the butt, but it's going to be a pain in the butt one way or another. So you might as well not get hacked and do it on the front side.
Right. I was resistant to using a password manager. I'm like, I don't want to mess with it, or what if it gets hacked or something like that. And the truth is, even though there's always risk. There's risk in everything we do. The password manager is way, way, way more secure than my list of passwords on a piece of paper next to my computer, or heaven forbid, the password file on my desktop. It's easy to use. It fills in the passwords for you. It'll save you time. Take on the learning curve. Embrace the learning curve. Just do it.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and if you're not certain, we can help you. You know what I mean? Like, we can help you, walk you through a password manager. We can walk you through MFA. This is something that we do every day. And we're happy to help out anybody to take these basic but super important steps.
So I mentioned a few slides back that there were two very common ways that Blackpoint sees people getting breached. The one is, of course, the exploiting your own remote access tools and using them against you. The next and the most common is email. Email is a constant source of frustration for business. You need it. I currently have 150 emails that I need to get through today before I punch out today. When I'm going through and process, and there was 200 at the beginning of today. So when you are asking your employees to process 200 plus messages a day, and you expect them to be protected by email filters, and you expect them to be trained on what to look for in a message, at some point someone's going to mess up, right? So I really want each of you to maybe post out a little reminder and tape it up above the desks for every employee to remember, look at the from address. Anytime you see the words urgent or important or hot or read now, any of those urgent things in the subject, be aware. Pay attention to grammar and spelling. Now, not if it comes from me. If it comes from me, just expect the grammar and spelling to be atrocious. Again, 200 emails a day. I don't have time for that. But if it's coming from your bank, it should be perfect. Someone proofread that several times. So if it has an error, that's a good red flag. Don't ever click the links in your messages. If you have a link, you want to go to it, just open it up yourself. Type it in yourself. Like go if it's from your bank and you think it's real, just open your bank. Go to bank1.com or whatever. It's fine. Don't ever click the links in the messages. And then finally, report your questionable emails, either before opening or before deleting, so that your colleagues will learn from you that there's something in there. And when in doubt, just call the person in real life. I teach fourth graders. Sometimes I do a program where I go into schools and teach them how to be safe online. And one of the things I tell them is it's all about IRL, in real life. Do you know this person in real life? Have you talked to this person in real life? Like, if this is a stranger to you, don't do anything they say. Well, if this is a CEO that suddenly decided that you need to send them 10 gift cards because they forgot to buy them for the event that they're going to, and they need you to send you the codes right now. All right, call him in real life. If that's him, he's going to verify, or her, she's going to verify real quick that she wants you to do that. 9 out of 10 times, 99 out of 100 times, that is actually a hacker trying to steal money from you. So post these steps. Go ahead, Derek.
That specific thing that you're bringing up right now regarding, the CEO and the gift cards and whatnot. One of the cool things we've been doing with clients for the last little bit is we have a board, basically like a border at the top of every email that basically says this is an external email. So right. Just in case, right? So the CEO sends you an email, you see external, you go, okay, Houston, we have a problem. Something's right here, So keep that in mind. If that's something that you guys, need set up or you're interested in, reach out to one of us and we'll walk you through what best practices are for that.
That's absolutely good practice. And then finally, create a culture of like acceptance and free, like in your business, create a culture where it's okay if you make a mistake. You just need to notify us. And I say this because I have been in cybersecurity for a long time. I know these tenets. They are embedded into my process for reviewing email. A couple years back, I got an email from one of my customers. Said urgent. It said, I opened it up. It was from poor Debbie, and she said, Jamie, this invoice is all wrong. I need you to look at this right away. I thought we figured this out last month. Like, I can't believe that, this problem happened again. And I'm like, oh, Debbie, and I clicked the link. I know better. I saw instantly when I opened it, this was not one of our invoices. There was something wrong. And because my business had created a culture where mistakes are expected and it was okay for me to self-report, you better believe I self-reported that. I took my computer off the internet, did the walk of shame back to my engineers. I'm like, I'm sorry, can you fix it for me? And then they took care of it. It wasn't a big deal. But if you create a culture of fear where you're like, if you mess up, you're going to get fired and you better not be clicking affected links and stuff like that, that can be a really toxic kind of experience, and it could have the opposite effect of what you're trying to get. So create that culture of self-reporting and that culture of acceptance, and then use tools to reduce the risk. So, all right, guys, any other thoughts about email? This is probably the most important thing a business can do to keep themselves secure.
One other thing just to mention, especially right now with the amount of hacks that are going on, a big one for right now is wire transfer fraud. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest attacks that's happening right now is people sending wire transfer instructions, which happens all the time in business. It's very common, right? It is very, very common right now that people are getting nailed. They're sending different wire transfer instructions. They're, pretending to be somebody else. Yep. Maybe that person didn't have two-factor authentication turned on in their email. They were able to corrupt that email and then forward, thousands upon hundreds of thousands of dollars. The important thing to this is, a couple things is the last statement that she has on here, the checkbox, is call the sender, verify. Yep. Make sure that you double check that. I mean, if you're sending out hundreds of thousands of dollars, make sure that you're sending that out and you're checking, right? Especially right now, it's super important.
Yeah, because that's the type of attack too that never actually hits the computer. Like, it's delivered through the computer. You see it on the screen, but that's not a hacker remoted in. That's just someone tricked you. Yep. Someone tricked you into sending the money to the wrong spot. And man, that is a super challenging thing to protect everyone from with just simply IT. So you got to train too. So the next thing is antivirus. And I have a habit of kind of like digging on antivirus a little bit and kind of like getting frustrated because people all the time think, oh, I've got antivirus, so I can just open it. It'll stop it if it's a virus, right? Or my network's protected because I have antivirus. Antivirus is a great tool. How it works is basically the antivirus company maintains a database of all the known malicious programs. And it says, if you see this malicious program running on this computer, stop it. Okay, that's good to have. That's really good to have. But the problem is bad actors are like changing those viruses every single day to try to hide from the antivirus. And it doesn't matter how good you are at making sure your definitions are up to date, things are going to get by. In fact, Blackpoint Cyber, we looked at all of the times we stopped attacks over the past year to date at the end of last month. 86% of the time we were taking action and stopping threats that antivirus did not see at all. Only 14% of the time was the antivirus involved in stopping that threat. That's crazy. So it tells me two things. One, antivirus stopped 14%, or it was involved in stopping 14% of breaches. So do it. You absolutely use it. 14 is good. You want to stop 14% of problems. But do not rely on it alone. This is not a magic bullet. I often joke that, my Roomba can't vacuum my floor without constant management. So why would we trust artificial intelligence to keep our networks clean without constant management? We need to be involved in the process. So, any thoughts on antivirus? Have you guys seen them get beat before?
Absolutely. That's your first initial knockdown, right? You're just knocking the dust off initially, right? But these guys are, antivirus isn't going to stop somebody that's entering in through your open remote access ports, right? It's just not. So it's a layer, but it's not the end all be all. Neither is a firewall, quite honestly. It takes many layers to ensure, and it also takes a constant review and making sure that we're always looking at it because things change, things happen, people move around. The network's no longer just your office.
Right.
People are all over the place. You got all these different devices. These devices get stolen. They get lost. People move on. Passwords need to change. What have you. So, it's tricky, and especially for a business owner, that's not your focus.
Yeah.
It's just not your focus. You need somebody to be focusing on that stuff so you can focus on what's making you money.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to, I mean, like you said, AV is good to have. It's an important facet, but having the people behind the software, I think that's been the biggest evolution that I've seen within security, right? Is that you need to have that people-powered software. So, this is where, having a security operations center, having, a team of technicians behind you with a managed service provider, having all of these people wrapped around the software that you have embedded, in your systems. That's the necessary component and the game changer in my mind.
So let me tell you a story about that. Everyone knows last year was pretty traumatic for all of us, right? COVID came. We all suddenly sent everyone from these relatively safe, secure networks into their home networks. We had a client, the CFO took her computer home to her home network, plugged it in, VPN'd into work, and just kept working, didn't skip a beat. Well, Blackpoint was on that computer she took home and plugged in, and we saw some weird PowerShell coming from another device and commands being run on her work computer that were exploring her device and seeing what it was connected to. We looked into it further, and what we discovered was that her 15-year-old son had jailbroken, or basically stripped the security layers off of his Xbox so that he could pirate video games. And a bad actor saw that jailbroken Xbox and was like, I wonder what's in this network, and was using it to enumerate or explore the environment and then spread laterally to his mom's work computer. So you need to have the protections in place, but you also need to plan for the unknown. How do you plan for the unknown? Well, if you're building a house, you put security cameras, motion sensors on your doors, right? Smoke detectors in every floor, so that you can detect when something goes wrong. That doesn't mean you run around trying to light fires or, inviting bad guys over for tea. You still do everything you can to stop that from happening, right? You use safety practices and you keep your doors locked. But if someone gets in, you know that you want to respond to that as soon as possible. So this takes us to our final concept today, which is digging in a little bit, or second to final. But this is the one I get excited about, right? Manage detection and response, detecting when a threat has happened and responding to it quickly. Too many people make the decision to expand their cybersecurity after a cyber attack. And while it's great, and I will, help and secure and, help them rebuild their networks after the fact, I really wish more businesses would install the smoke detectors throughout their network before the fire starts. Because if we can catch that problem when it's just a little bit of smoke wafting out of the oven and respond to it, is a lot more effective than waiting until it's a full-blown structure fire. So when we talk about managed detection and response, that is exactly what we're talking about, putting the sensors in place in your network so that you can detect the hacker, tradecraft, or the behavior, the bad guy moving around inside the environment, so you can respond to it when it's a small problem and stop it right then and there. Letting us focus on that for you allows you to not worry about cybersecurity, not have the stress. You just focus on doing your business. So, any thoughts about that one, guys?
I was thinking, if a business doesn't have MDR, they don't have the detectors up, what can they do? What do they do?
So you're reliant then on your people, right, to self-report. You're reliant on Sally in accounting realizing she clicked that malicious link. Unfortunately, back in the day, like when I first started, and I've only been in this like 8 years, guys, like I know I'm not like super long-term and tenured, but I've seen it change. So I always joke that technology is like dog years, right? Like we see 7 years for every one normal year. So when I first started, we were stopping like pop-ups from coming up on the computers. I would talk to my clients about their machines running slow because there's so much garbage on them. That's not a problem anymore. Now when Sally in accounting clicks that link, she doesn't know she did anything wrong because nothing pops up. Nothing tells her that she made a mistake. And so if you are relying on your employees to self-report and your only incident response plan is to pick up the phone and tell your IT people that you're seeing ransomware in your machines, it's just too late. It's not an effective kind of tool. So businesses used to not be able to afford this level of solution. That's why I think most small to mid-sized businesses don't have a good detection and response plan, but it is available now. And it is affordable, so you should do it.
It's interesting that ransomware is one of those attacks that are known, right? It's a very known attack. They make it very known. But as you showed the slide earlier, where you talked about enumeration and remediation, like basically the tradecraft and what they do. At the end of that slide, it was 90 days, right? I mean, that means you've been playing around in your system for 90 days, right? So ransomware is probably the end of that, right? That's like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm here now, and now you owe me money, right? Until that takes place, they're doing a lot of other stuff, right? So they're exfiltrating data. They're basically getting your client list. They're getting financial information. Like most attacks, like aren't even known, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, so everyone thinks about ransomware. It's like, yeah, that's an important attack, but that's really the end all. Like that's the result. Everything else before that, you have no clue. Like you just have no idea using traditional software and traditional security technologies, right? So you have to do things differently because they sure are.
Yeah, Derek, two points on what you guys were saying here. First off, when you're looking at ransomware, just you brought that up, and I actually met a person. I go over to the YMCA. Different stupid human tricks to try to keep myself a little bit in shape. And I was talking to this gentleman, and here he ran a manufacturing business, and this was like the third week in January, and he's like, what do you do? We're just chit chatting. I was like, oh, well, I work with this firm. We do cybersecurity. He says, we got hit. We got, we were encrypted. I was like, oh, it's terrible. He's like, yeah. He's like, but we're getting through it. It's been a little while. I was like, well, when did it happen? And he said it happened the weekend of Christmas. It was like the third week in January. So something that kind of, when you talk about, like, you'll hear us talk about things like downtime, it's like, oh, well, you don't want that downtime. You encrypt quickly. It takes a second to encrypt. You unencrypt really slow. It takes a while for that process of an encryption, to play out. So, just something to keep in mind there when you're talking about the concept of encryption.
Yeah. And I think this all leads really nicely actually into this next slide, hackers can't hide. Because exactly what Derek said is true. Ransomware is step 100 out of, or step 99, right? I guess the 100th one is them cashing out from that attack. What most people need is the ability to see that activity and the experts to interpret what they're seeing and to know when something has deviated from normal. And so if you are building your cybersecurity stack and detection and response isn't a part of it, you're missing 2 out of the 5 core elements of that plan. And that means you have to rely overly hard on the last one. So David, you were talking about that guy spending weeks and weeks and weeks trying to get his data back up and running. That would crush a lot of businesses. I know many businesses, especially like someone in manufacturing or retail, where the content they put out every single day is how they get their money in. If you can't do that for weeks in an efficient way, you're ship's sunk. So how does backup disaster recovery, how does that kind of finalize this whole conversation that we've been having today about security? You're muted.
See,
We had to say it at least once today.
I told you I forget things. Sorry, Clicky forgot. But no, they go hand in hand. It's not even linear, right? They're related. So when it comes to having good backups, if that unfortunate incident should happen, the ability for us to be able to get that data back is so important. And I've seen it in this industry. I bet you everyone in this room has seen it, where having good backups has been, almost a saving grace when that unfortunate event does happen. Because then at least not all is lost. Now, I want to make an important point though. Having those frontline tools is also important. Remember, I said they go hand in hand. So just I'll make this one short because I know we're getting short on time. But there was actually in a previous life, there was a hack that I saw, and it was in the news. It was down in Georgia, and it was a municipality. And what had actually occurred with it was that actor was in the system for several months prior to. And what they did was they disabled the important data from getting backed up. So it was just kind of like this basic
So the backups were succeeding then. So they had no backup failure alerts.
But none of the important data that they needed. So then when they were like, okay, I got you, I'll just use my backups. It's a bunch of logs. And so backup and disaster, I don't want to diminish the importance of the slide. I just want to make the point that these are hand in hand. You want to have both good backups and good frontline tools.
I think that's super well said. I have seen appropriately applied backup disaster recovery systems absolutely save the day. I've seen them be a huge win. And I'll get calls. I'm like, oh, we're ransomware. Then I get another call saying, oh, good, we've got backup. And we've got good backups, and I can hear the relief. So you absolutely want to have a solid backup disaster recovery plan. I've got friends in the industry. I believe in it passionately. Unfortunately, with almost every ransomware attack that Blackpoint has seen this past year, we are also more and more often seeing double extortion. So we don't only see the demand for ransomware a ransom at the end to get your data unlocked, but we're also seeing a little clause that says, oh, hey, okay, I understand you probably have a good backup in place. I was in your network for a while and I saw them and I wasn't able to disable them. But I did also export all your data offsite, and I took a backup of my own. And if you don't pay me, I'm just going to have to make my money another way. Maybe I'll extort your customers with the data I have on them. Maybe I'll just release it to the news, or maybe I'll sell it on the dark web to the highest bidder. So will you please just pay me, and we'll just put all this unpleasantness behind us. So even if you've got a good backup, even if you can recover your business and you're working, you're still faced with the decision, do I pay or do I risk being exposed as another business that's been breached? It's just not worth it. So again, each and every one of these elements that we've talked about today all work together to make that basket to keep your data, your network safe. But it's up to you guys, like, how you implement it, which types of weaves you use. Like, it's really important to have a company like PGH Networks to guide you through that process, because the average layperson, I think, anytime you get more than 5 computers together, you need a professional to manage it from that point on. So, all right. So we have talked a lot today. We're at the end of our time. Hopefully this was good content. My goal wasn't just to say, oh, buy this or buy that, right? It was to give you the whole idea of this piece that you could weave together and build a secure network. If you do want to learn more about our managed detection and response approach to cybersecurity, or PGH networks in general, what should they do, guys? Nicole, how do they get a hold of you?
So they can reach out to marketing@pghnetworks.com, or if you happen to work with Dave or Derek or Chuck, you can reach out to them directly as well.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Is it that time yet, Nicole?
It is that time.
Come
Wait,
on,
wait,
here
wait,
we go. My
Before
favorite
we
time.
do before we do this sign off, I wanna especially thank Jamie for joining us today, and also somebody highly important I didn't mention on the front side, but none of this happens without somebody putting it together and somebody doing the production behind it. So Nicole Murtha, thank you for all the hard work that you did to put this together. Definitely, very much appreciated. And I can't stop him. He's like getting ready to like jump out of his seat.
Enough noise.
He's
noise.
got
right.
1 minute. 1 minute. Roll the wheel.
Ready?
For the wheel of names.
Doo.
Who do we got? So we're giving away PGH Networks t-shirts, the cool ones like we have here. We're giving a whole pack away. And the winner is Chelsea Muse. So Chelsea, Nicole will actually be reaching out to you. Congratulations. She'll get your sizes and whatnot, and we'll get those shipped out to you. I want to thank everybody for joining. Dave, Chuck, Jamie, Nicole, you guys did a fantastic job today. It was super informative. And if anybody has any questions, concerns, comments, again, reach out to either marketing, myself, Dave, Chuck, or if you have Jamie's contact information, one way or another, we'll get those answers, those questions answered for you.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.